The coastal town of Oakhaven was quiet. The sea wind howled. Rain lashed against the window panes of the few shops still open. Lila hurried down the deserted street, her coat pulled tight against the cold. She was a stranger to this town, arriving only a few days ago to visit her grandmother. Now caught in the unexpected storm, she desperately searched for shelter. A dim light flickered at the end of the street. It beckoned Lila closer. The sign above creaked in the wind, barely visible through the downpour. The forgotten pages, it read, the lettering faded and worn. A bookstore. Lila hesitated for a moment before pushing open the heavy wooden door. The warmth inside was a welcome contrast to the biting wind. Lila shook the rain from her coat and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and leather. Bookshelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, their titles a blur in the dim light. Behind a cluttered counter stood a man, his face hidden behind a thick book. He looked up as Lila approached, his eyes sharp and curious. "Good evening," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nasty night out there." The man grunted in agreement, his gaze returning to his book. Lila browsed the shelves, her fingers trailing along the spines of the books. Each book seemed to hold a lifetime of stories, forgotten memories waiting to be reawakened. She found herself drawn to a corner filled with old journals and diaries. Their leather covers were worn smooth with time, their pages filled with faded ink. It was like stepping into a graveyard of forgotten dreams. As she reached for a particularly worn journal, a title caught her eye. "Whispers of the Past," it read in elegant, spidery handwriting. The book felt strangely warm in her hands. Lila opened the journal, its pages brittle with age. The first entry was dated almost a century ago. The handwriting was elegant, the words filled with a longing that resonated deeply within Lila. She began to read, her heart pounding with a strange sense of anticipation. The journal belonged to a woman named Clara, a woman who had lived in Oakhaven over 100 years ago. Clara wrote of her life in the small coastal town, of her hopes and dreams, her loves and losses. She wrote of the people she knew, their stories interwoven with hers like threads in a tapestry. Lila became engrossed in Clara's world, the pages of the journal transporting her back in time. Clara wrote of a hidden cove, a place of breathtaking beauty known only to the locals. She wrote of a storm, much like the one raging outside, that had shipwrecked a young sailor on the shores of Oakhaven. She wrote of her forbidden love for this stranger, a love that defied the conventions of their time. Lila's fingers trembled as she turned the pages. She felt a strange connection to Clara, a sense of shared destiny. Clara's words painted a vivid picture of Oakhaven's past, a past that felt strangely familiar. As Lila delved deeper into the journal, she realized that Clara's story held a dark secret, a secret that cast a long shadow over the present. Lila discovered that the young sailor Clara had fallen in love with was her great-great-grandfather, a man she had believed lost at sea. The storm that brought him to Oakhaven had also claimed his life, leaving Clara heartbroken and pregnant. Clara's words were filled with a grief so profound that Lila could feel it in her own heart. Lila closed the journal, her mind reeling. She had come to Oakhaven seeking solace and connection. Instead, she had stumbled upon a past that was both tragic and beautiful, a past that intertwined with her own in ways she never could have imagined. The storm outside had subsided, leaving behind a silence that seemed to amplify the echoes of the past. Lila left the bookstore that night, the journal tucked safely in her bag. She walked through the quiet streets of Oakhaven, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had learned. The town no longer felt unfamiliar. It was a place where her ancestors had lived and loved, a place where their stories whispered on the wind. Lila knew then that she would never truly leave Oakhaven. She had found a piece of herself in the pages of a dusty old journal, a piece that had been lost for generations.